Hi,
I'm actually
everyone. My
telling
name is
that.
Wanda Miller. I'm the Assistant Director at the John Germain Memorial Library in Sag Harbor. I've been conducting this series of local spotlight interviews in order to capture the experiences of our local community during the COVID-19 pandemic. These interviews are being recorded as historical documents for us to use in the library archive. They may also be posted to the library's social media as we work to help create community connections and help people feel that we're all in this situation together. I want to thank you all for joining us today. I'm really excited today to have Rabbi Daniel Geffen with us. And my first question is a little bit of a repeat of the introduction. It's partly because of this being an oral history and it's kind of a little funny, but what is your name?
My name is Daniel Geffen. I tend to go as Dan more often than not, but I'm happy with whatever works for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, what year were you born?
1981.
Thank you. How long have you been in Sag Harbor?
So my wife, Lou, and I moved here in June of 2014, but my parents had a house for many years in Bridgehampton, so have a little bit of a familial history here for a long time as well.
That's great. Thank you. What kind of work do you do? What does it entail?
So I am the rabbi of Temple Adas Israel in Sag Harbor, and being a rabbi is a hard job to define in some ways. Every rabbi's job is a little bit different. Principally speaking, the word rabbi means teacher, but as clergy, we are also beyond, just being teachers. We're also preachers. We are pastors, for lack of a better terminology. And my job, depending on the hour of the day, can oscillate back and forth between many different responsibilities. But primarily, the role of a rabbi is to be a leader, hopefully a teacher of any Jewish community, and to be someone who's dedicated themselves to studying the history, the philosophy, the theology, the practice, and ultimately the ethics and values of religion, in our case, the Jewish religion.
Thank you for that. How has COVID-19 changed your business in a way, so to speak?
I think it's an excellent question, and I've given it some thought. And the truth is that in some ways, everything has changed, and in some ways, nothing has changed. And by that, I mean that, the virus obviously is an all-encompassing reality for all of us. But it didn't, for example, when it came around, people who were struggling before it with spiritual matters of relationships with their loved ones, economic challenges, world challenges, right? All of these things existed before the pandemic, and they continue to exist today. So a lot of my responsibilities over the last couple months have felt oddly similar in the sense that I'm still having many of the same kinds of conversations with congregants and community leaders. But of course, that the entire mechanism and means by which those conversations take place have changed radically. So our services, our prayer services that would have happened normally on every Shabbat and every holiday and other occasion that would warrant it, we're in person here in our temple. And of course, as soon as we were told that we had to shut down, we did that immediately and with good reason. And so we've had to shift our worship services, our programs, and even my pastoral counseling to an online format. And so that's meant obviously some adaptation on my part, but much more impressively, I think, adaptation on the part of my congregants and the members of my community, who've all adapted much more quickly than I would have imagined to this new reality and to this online reality. And so, as I said, many things certainly are different, but I think the work as it is has remained actually fairly similar to what it was before.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how everything has kind of changed. Have you ever experienced anything like this before?
I think this is one of the few times in my life where I can answer with an unequivocal answer, which is no. I don't think that I have anything even remotely close to reference. I'm sure that there are parallels of certain aspects of what has changed in our lives, but as a collective, as a total experience, I can't compare anything to having to change virtually every aspect of individual life, familial life, communal life, and quite frankly, global life. So I think, I'm somebody who appreciates drawing connections to other examples, other data points, other places to learn from. But I'm also very cautious about when I make generalizations or comparisons. And then in some ways, actually, I think, especially in a situation like this, that appreciating the uniqueness of it has actually been extremely helpful in trying to both address it and to help my community as best as possible through it.
Thank you. How has it changed you personally?
It's a much deeper question. It's a question that I probably will be asking myself for many years to come. I hope and I pray that it has changed me in positive ways. That certainly I think, like most people, I have had to ultimately confront and question my priorities, the priorities of my professional life, the priorities of my family life, to consider how even small acts can make a very, very big impact. And I think ultimately speaking, I'm not sure that it's changed me, but it has perhaps strengthened and reinforced the idea that I decided to go into what amounts to public service work. And that at a moment like this, if I'm not open to change, then that's I think a huge loss on my part. So I have tried as best as I can to adjust as best as I am able to. And I think that on a personal level, I'm not even sure that I have the words for it yet. But I certainly hope that whatever changes have taken place are ones that, ultimately speaking, will be positive, not just for myself, but for the people that I share my life with.
Yeah, that's
Classic
amazing.
Rabbi answer, no answer. That's
It's okay. What kinds of routines are different?
so in some ways my routines were less affected than many other people, mostly because, again, I would never put clergy necessarily in the same category of frontline workers or emergency workers or anything of that nature. That we were told fairly early on that our work needed to continue, but just simply not in the same exact way that it would otherwise. But for all intents and purposes, my daughter still gets me up at 6 o'clock in the morning every day. The dog still needs a walk, at 7 o'clock every morning, every day, and the various things of life continue on. But of course, the whatever resembled a social life, certainly before this, changed quite dramatically. Not being able to see family or to interact with people in a regular, routinized kind of way obviously changed dramatically. Simple things like going to the grocery store, to the bank, or all the sort of errands that I once perhaps dreaded or at least took for granted, and now have to require a certain amount of conscious energy that didn't require before. It may seem like nothing, but every single time that you have to get into a car, get out of a car, to be conscious of your hands, your face, who you talk to, what distance, right? These are things that, even if we're not conscious of it, have actually a fairly significant unconscious effect on our sense of what is quote unquote normal. And I think, going back to your sort of earlier question about learned experiences, I think if anything, this has just made me sort of more attuned to things that I perhaps took for granted in the past. And I'll, as one small anecdote to say, and I think that this was poignant for me, the first time that I walked into a supermarket and wasn't able to find the things that I had commonly expected, and the realization that for many, many, many people around the world, that is a common occurrence, right? That's a common reality. So I'm sorry that it took what it took to teach me that lesson, but it was quite profound when I realized it.
Yeah, it's a pretty dramatic lesson. It's very new for us here. What do you think things will look like for yourself and or the temple in the future?
That's an excellent question, one that we've been talking about a lot internally. As it happens, we going into the fall, we're in a position, and still are in a position, actually, to renovate our 120-something-year-old building. And we had every intention to begin in the fall, and we still have every intention to begin in the fall. So that already, we had a sort of mindset of the next few years of our life being somewhat disrupted, and then eventually emerging into something that we hope will be a brighter future. So in some strange way, we were kind of primed mentally for thinking in terms of the future itself. And I have to say that while I can be accused of probably being overly optimistic about many things in life, it's sort of my MO around here, that I have every optimistic view that our temple actually in the future, and quite frankly, even in the present, will continue to be as vibrant and engaged, and I hope as serving of the community as we have ever been. And that when we emerge from what I hope will be a state in which everybody is able to live again a largely healthy and unencumbered life, that we will be right there ready to go, and that our intention basically, and for now, regardless of what limitations are placed upon us, that we are not disappeared, right? We are not gone. We are still doing, if anything, actually, I would say that the staff of this temple have been working twice as much as we have ever worked before.
Yeah, learning new routines and working from home and everything like that. It's all different.
Does make a lot of adjustments for sure, but our vision of the future is one that has not changed. That we really are, we see a bright future for this temple, which again is the oldest on Long Island. And our sort of phraseology is that when we started the process of preparing for raising the money for the renovation, we were celebrating 120 years, and we are hoping to plan for the next 120 years. I often joke I'll be replaced by a robot rabbi at that point, but it will. The building itself will stand.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about the experience that you would like to share?
Well, I think it would be strange to have a conversation today and not acknowledge what is going on in the world around us, irrespective of the virus. And I was at the march in Bridgehampton on Tuesday night, and it was a remarkable experience for a lot of reasons. I've been involved with my fair share of protest marches in my life, and since I've been in Sag Harbor, many, but nothing on the scale of what I saw in Bridgehampton. And in particular, the fact that, at least by my estimation, 80% of them were young people. And to me, that was a rather remarkable thing. And I don't know whether the virus has any impact on that in one form or the other, but I think that one thing that I would say, and I'm in the midst of writing a letter to my community trying to express my thoughts on this, that as we have spent much of the last few months really fighting for our physical well-being, right, fighting a virus that affects the body, what we are seeing play out around the country, and even down the street, is a battle ultimately to fight against a virus of the soul, and I think that's been something that in a catastrophe situation, things can go one of two directions. People can run away from religion, run away from values, run away from ethics, right? Go to our basest instincts. But what I've seen actually through most of this experience, not just here locally, but in most places, is that there has been a heightened sense of the interconnectedness of life, of how we are all ultimately connected to each other and responsible to each other, and that our behaviors exist beyond just the self or even just the family, that we must be considerate of our impact on the world around us in every way, shape, or form. And so I think in some ways, it's like pulling a Band-Aid off. Maybe it's best that we are dealing with everything now. Maybe it's best as we are all in this sort of position of realizing that our world is not what we assumed it to be, that perhaps we can all work over the next several months very seriously and intently to emerge a different people, a different country, with different emphasis than we have had carried into the last few months.
Thank you. And just to contextualize this for the archive piece, if somebody looks at this in the future, the protest marches are in response to the death of George Floyd, who was, it was just a really sad occurrence.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sorry, just to.
No, that's extremely important.
Yeah.
Extremely important.
Thank you. Is there any support in this that the library can provide related to any of the issues that are involved?
Well, I think, first and foremost, my gratitude to you and to the staff of the library, and not just the last few months, but in all the years that and all the work that you put in for all of us. The library, at least in my estimation, and I think that Judaism as a religion that has been based around the sacred literature and the importance of study and the importance of dissemination of information and teaching future generations, that the library is the core of every community. So in a principal way, what I would say is not so much what the library can do, for us or for me or for the temple specifically, but I think one of the things that John Germain in particular does extremely well. I bring my daughter there as frequently as we were able to, is the selection of books that are highlighted. And especially right now, many parents are struggling to try to figure out how to explain to their children what it is that they are seeing in the world around them, be it the virus, be it the protests, and the remarkable work of curating and bringing forth the right kinds of literature, the right kinds of books, the things that all of us can use as resources, not just for children, but for us as adults as well, to open our eyes. Sometimes I think people take for granted the idea that there is a library, right? That you can just go down the street and have access to, the world's knowledge. These are things that certainly do not exist everywhere in the world, and they certainly have not existed throughout human history. I think our greatest potential is really in our capacity to learn. And I think the library serves that function better than anywhere else. So I would say there's nothing specific that I can say other than to continue to do the work that you were already doing. And if anything, to continue to do the work that you're doing right now and highlighting, people in the community of various kinds, right? Getting people to see different faces, different voices. These are core activities. These are things that I think will benefit not just the library, not just Sag Harbor, but really, it has the potential to affect the entire world. And I really am grateful for what all of you are doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we're fortunate right now to have the technology to bring it to people digitally as well, which is something that's, different than in the past.
Indeed.
Yeah. Have there been any silver linings for you or anything that's inspired you during this time?
So again, an excellent question. There's always a part of me that when, sort of catastrophe strikes in one form or the other, whether it's something that affects an individual or a family or the world, the natural tendency for me, again, is I try to look for, where are the opportunities for positivity. And there also is a part of me that always says, well, maybe it's okay to acknowledge the fact that when something is crummy, that it's okay to say that it's crummy, right? That we don't always have to necessarily find a silver lining. But what I guess I would say as a sort of meta comment on that is that, Judaism as a religion, and I think most religions share this concept, is that, humans are fallible. We are individually and collectively fallible. And that every single day is an opportunity for us to learn and to grow. And I think that, as I said before, well, I think if somebody gave me a magic wand and said, you can go back in time and none of this would have ever happened, there's no question. Everybody should say we would want to go back in time and wish this all away. But since we can't do that, then I think it is appropriate for us to look around and to see, where are the bright points, right? Where are the points in which we can hold up and say, this is an example of humanity at its best as opposed to at its worst. And I think I've seen that constantly. I see that virtually every day. And I think while there are plenty of people who perhaps are not as thoughtful as they might be, or as caring as they might be towards others, that the vast majority of people that I speak with, that I interact with, that I see around town, the people that I've known, for years who work in the local stores, the people who I see, organizing these marches, right? That everybody is still trying to bring out their very best self, I think. And I think that to me, that's been extremely heartening because, as I said, I think it's very easy to take for granted, what ultimately is happening in response. But there are plenty of moments in human history when things go sideways, in which we turn on each other, in which we destroy each other, in which we hurt each other, in which we look out for ourselves at the expense of everyone else. And it's not to say that there haven't been examples of that over the last few months, but I would say in my experience and my observation, there have been far more examples of kindness and generosity and caring and openness and vulnerability and the kinds of things that I think are necessary in even greater measure today. And so I hope that the only challenge after moments like this is that, God willing, there will be an end point. So what do we look like the day after, right? When we go back to quote unquote real life, have we taken anything with us that will help us to make sure that we have grown in some positive way? And I'm hopeful that that will be the case.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. We have a couple of participants here. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions, but that's it for me pretty much.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm an open book, so anybody wants to ask away. I think Noel probably has asked me a million questions over the years, but certainly I'm here to answer anything that you have.
Okay. It looks like we're all set. We're very good. Thank you so much for joining us and answering all these questions.
It's really my pleasure. And I will just close by saying if there's anything that I or the temple can do for John Germain Library or for the community, that I'm here, we are here, and we are very much ready and willing to help.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. And as you know, reach out to us anytime.
It's my pleasure. As soon as we're allowed, you will see me and Eva and Lou back there, I'm sure.
Okay. Yep. We're prepping the space now, getting it ready.
It's great. It's great. Take care. Okay, everybody be safe. Thanks again for the time. I really appreciate it. It's an honor.
Take care.